Golzari-Munro, and I'm here in Aberdeen at the E-FWD studio. I've just been talking with Larson, CEO of Proserv, a global yet UK-based controls technology company. We were talking about how reliance on controls technology is changing and evolving as our energy systems change. Larson, welcome to the E-FWD studio in Aberdeen. When people think about the energy transition, they often think about big infrastructure, pylons, wind turbine blades, towers. Actually, there's a really critical element in controls technology, and that's what you do at Proserv. Tell us.
Yeah, that's right, and I think it's right in some ways that the big infrastructure gets all the attention. It takes up a lot of land, consumes a lot of energy. You need a lot of labour and resource to be able to compete in those areas. And they are not often areas that the UK is well equipped to compete in, especially with other fiscal basins around the world. But the control systems are probably one of the key technologies that actually hinge the whole thing together. They give you access to safely and reliably control that infrastructure, whatever it is, whether it's an oil and gas platform, whether it's subsea, whether it's wind. And it gives you access to all of the data that actually tells you what's happening. And obviously Proserv is a company that's our heritage. We do other things as well, but controls technology is very much our heritage. Like a lot of companies, we're trying to pivot into the renewable space, especially around offshore wind, which obviously Scotland has got a great abundance of natural resources there. We've got the ScotWind coming up. And the control system is absolutely critical. And you're right, it doesn't get much attention, but it's probably the key technology that allows you to safely and reliably control what's going on with your energy infrastructure, but it's often overlooked.
You are driving a digitalisation strategy across the business. What does that look like? How is the business evolving with that?
Yeah, so traditionally what would happen, an oil and gas operator, when something goes wrong in their infrastructure, they would call Proserv, they give us access through their cyber-secure data infrastructure to get access to the data to the control system. And then we tell them, this is what went wrong last week. That's why you've got an alert that's triggering. What we're now doing is working with a lot of these operators to get access to that data on a live basis and then proactively telling them before something happens, by the way, you've opened this valve, you're going to have a problem in a week's time, you're going to trigger this alert. And we've been doing that over the last 2 or 3 years, so helping the operator make more proactive, advanced decisions. It's a bit like giving them access to the dashboard in their car, where previously they were driving their car without sight of the dashboard. We're now also applying that into the offshore wind space. High voltage cable failures has been the single biggest challenge in offshore wind for years. And we've got what we call ECG, which is a cable monitoring system that effectively allows you to proactively monitor and measure the characteristics of the high voltage cable, effectively giving you a dashboard to give you insight into what's happening with that cable. So if you've got too much power going through the cable and you're at risk of burning it out or frying it, you can scale back the power. You potentially earn a little bit less money, you're not generating as much power, but you save the life of that cable so you can manage that process and then you can proactively plan to replace it before it actually fails. So all of this is what we call our digitalisation strategy, but ultimately it's about giving operators of critical energy infrastructure the foresight and the ability to make decisions to prevent disasters happening, in cables failing, subsea wells going offline, anything like that. And the control system is critical to all of that.
Now that is absolutely critical for security of supply, but also national security as well. And you are a UK-based company. You are also working globally as well, aren't you?
We are, yes. So we are UK-based, UK headquartered. We've got 800 people across the business. So the UK, Norway, a number of countries in the Middle East, and the US is effectively where we have our global facilities. But we provide our energy solutions all over the world. We're currently working in Australia, Southeast Asia, offshore West Africa, Brazil. So any of the energy basins effectively is where our people and our products and services get deployed into. But to your point, these are critical around energy security and energy dependence. And obviously we've all seen how the global energy environment is changing constantly. Who would have predicted 6 months ago that the US would be trying to broker peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. So the energy markets again are at the verge of potentially going through another huge pivot that probably a year ago nobody would have saw happening. So giving people access to safe and surety of supply energy is absolutely critical, and that's what we try and do.
And your technology is really critical and transferable across the energy transition. As we start deploying much more renewable energy, you are transferring the skills and the expertise you have into this new era.
Yes, very much so. And I've touched on the cable monitoring, but control systems exist in wind turbines as well. And particularly pertinent for Scotland as we go into floating offshore wind, the whole offshore infrastructure becomes more like a traditional oil and gas infrastructure. It's a harsh environment. It's very risky and expensive to send people offshore to fix that floating offshore wind platform. Therefore, the control system and how you monitor it and how you get access from a safe shore-based centre to understand what's going on and reduce having to send people offshore all the time is absolutely critical. It reduces carbon emissions, it's safer, and not very many people like working in really harsh environments like the North Sea in the middle of winter. And so that's where our technology that we've deployed for 30 to 40 years in the subsea environment is equally at home in terms of offshore wind and especially floating offshore wind.
Now, you've recently led a sponsor-backed management buyout of Proserv. Can you tell us what that means for you, what that means for your future direction and growth?
Yes, we did, and it was probably the culmination of about 18 months of work. And essentially, our strategy was very much to build on our controls ethos and make this pivot into the broader energy space. I've made no secret of the fact that we want to be the controls provider of choice across the full energy spectrum, not just oil and gas. And that was our strategy. And the sponsor-backed management buyout was a way to align ourselves with investors who bought into that vision, wanted to back that strategy and wanted to give us that support and the existing leadership team support to take the business ahead for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And so really exciting time. I think it's re-energized the whole organisation again as we look to do this and pivot, not losing sight of our heritage, but pivot and take those skill sets and apply them into that broader new energy environment.
And that absolutely is critical to the ethos of E-FWD as well. We are looking to take the heritage that we have in this country and transfer that into growth in the energy sectors of the future as well. So what is it about the E-FWD community that you find most valuable, and what aspects of the work that you're doing can the community contribute to?
Yeah, I think there's two things that kind of stand out to me. The first is the networking and meeting other companies in similar positions, helping understand how we can collaborate and work with other companies to deliver these new solutions. The other thing I found really interesting through the E-FWD experience is both listening to and having the ability to put voices and perspectives back to government, whether that's the Scottish government or it's the UK government. Having that ability to interact directly with them through E-FWD has been a very empowering exercise, especially as we try and apply these solutions in the more global environment.
So innovative companies like yours that have got a future focus and a growth mindset are exactly the kinds of companies that we welcome here at E-FWD. So thank you very much for joining me, Davis Larson.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.